So what is biblical beauty? What is femininity as God has designed it and created it? And how can we as parents nurture that, grow that, develop that in a biblical way in the lives of our daughters and our granddaughters, our sisters, and others that may look to us for leadership? Well, my name is Dan. I'm one of the teaching pastors at Life Fellowship in suburban Charlotte, North Carolina, actually in Cornelius. I'm joined today by our executive producer, Josh Brahm, who is the founder and president of the Equal Rights Institute. And we're going to continue a conversation that we began a couple episodes ago on how to teach our daughters biblical femininity in the same vein as we did a series not long before that on how to teach men, or our young men, biblical masculinity. So, Josh, when we ended up last time, we were talking about just, some of the attributes of what beauty should and shouldn't include by definition in the way we teach our daughters and raise them up. But here's one that I want to hit right off the bat, and it is how to use your voice. I think there is some really valid criticism that has come from the feminist movement in general, and some of it directed, I think, toward Christians appropriately, in that we have discounted at best. I think I'm being generous by saying this, that we have discounted the voice of women.
Yes.
And, I think of Esther. Esther's one of my favorite Bible characters because she really risked a lot. She risked her life. She was speaking up for her people. There was a lot that's going on. She had to take stands that were not just political, but moral. And she used her voice carefully, but clearly when it mattered.
Yeah.
And she did it with wisdom, and she did it with courage.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the opportunities parents ought to have is to teach our daughters to use their voice with influence as a leader and as a counselor and as a thinker and as a provocateur, and in the various ways. Men and women communicate differently. Yeah. And one of the things that really disturbs me. Okay, I'm going to rant.
Okay. Yeah. I've been missing.
You missing my rant?
Dan rant. So let's go.
The trend that there appears, particularly politically, on both sides of the aisle, for cursing and using vulgarities, and it begins at the top, but to become part of our modern day vernacular as if it gives us authority. And it particularly disturbs me to see beautiful, grace-filled women all of a sudden talking like sailors. I know it makes me old or whatever. I don't want to hear a man talk that way. I really don't hear one. Somebody says, somebody kiss you with that mouth. The lack of civility in the way we communicate today, disappoints me. I think that's the way, and we see that happening a lot. Our voice ought not need profanity to have authority. And I think there's this, I'm this mad that I can drop these words. And I think at that point we kind of admit we've kind of lost the battle, because it's like the preacher that used to preach, foundation weak here, so yell louder. He'd put in his notes. When we have to resort to vulgarities in order to make our point, then I think maybe it's time to revisit our point and see if we can make them better.
I'm not convinced.
You're not convinced.
But we've had that debate
before.
Had this debate before. I do think there are occasions.
Unshakable on this.
Fair.
I'm unshakable on this.
But maybe it's I bet you would agree though. So as a different example, like and agreeing with this, like the pro-life movement is hugely been helped by the fact that there aren't just men who are speaking for the pro-life movement, but also women speaking for the pro-life movement.
And I think their voice of credibility in that moment is perhaps, particularly in today's culture, more significant.
Yes, of course it is. Like there are reasons, and this is kind of, some pro-lifers would say like, don't lean into that, or just like, stand up against that or whatever. And I'm just like, look, like when we made our new curriculum for schools, I didn't put myself in front of the camera. I put Emily, who's awesome, in front of the camera and let her present the information. Like that's just like there were just kind of certain realities, but also there are things that just women can express that men can't. There are women who are post-abortive who've been able to tell their stories in a way that like I wouldn't want to just like hear guys telling a bunch of like their wives' post-abortion stories or something like weird like that.
Yeah, and I don't have disagreement with that at all. And in fact, I think it's an opportunity. I think that we need to hear both from men and for women.
Right.
And I think there are unique aspects of it. For instance, I think a man needs a man to look in the eyes of another dude who has impregnated somebody and say, step up, don't disappear. Yeah. And the authoritative voice of another dude saying that, I think, is significant.
Hell yeah. No,
the reality is I think there is a little bit of a puritanical remnant of how we communicate that maybe Victorian. It may be more Victorian.
Yeah, I wonder if sometimes there's been kind of a like. If you're still talking about like the pro-life movement having like women versus men?
No, I'm talking about the coarseness of language at times.
Oh, okay. You've gone back to okay.
Yeah. But the reality is, it's hard. What you brought about, even with the pro-life movement, with men versus women speaking. Yeah. I'm a nervous wreck about this series on women because we've become we've been culturally conditioned to be overly sensitive to some things, and in some cases a correction was needed. Yeah. At the same time, we have to be careful not to overcorrect.
Sure.
And there is an order in design by God. So I'm a firm complementarian, for instance, in a church setting. I believe to deny that denies clarity of Scripture, and if you go down that path, then there are many other things. It doesn't mean women can never have a teaching role. It just means that some roles are reserved for men, in as much as some roles are reserved for women in creation. And so believing that, I'm not going to apologize for the fact that, first of all, my belief on that, even if I might do it different if I was God, I'm not God, so I don't get to change the rules simply because I find myself more comfortable in another setting. But we have to navigate this carefully, but we have to navigate it biblically. Yeah. In my home, I am the head of the home. That is a biblical role. I need to be accountable in exercising my leadership in that home in a godly and a correct way. And I also need to make sure that I give my wife full voice, not only to me, but into the lives of my kids. And my boys will tell you. In fact, the last time I was with my boys, they had a big joke about one time they didn't know I was in the house, and somebody got smart with my wife. One of the boys did. I don't even know which one it was. But they said they could hear my recliner click as I got up out of it, you know how it snaps when and they said they knew. He said our eyes got big. We were terrified because they could hear me stomping across the house to confront them on how they're looking at
something about like when someone comes after my wife, even if it's one of the kids, there's just a natural kind of a don't do that.
Yeah, and I believe that's godly leadership. I believe that's a protective men provide, protect, love, and lead, and I believe that's part of what God has assigned us to do.
Could be taken too far. Don't go like smacking them, just because they talk back to mom. But
right, though I got smacked for talking back to mom, and it taught me a good lesson. But then again, that was the '60s. It was a different time, right? But the reality is, using your voice for righteousness is a gift for both men and for women, but too often it has been considered more of the domain for men than it has been for the women. And using your voice in that way is important, which brings me to another one. Again, I'm nervous about bringing some of these up, but I believe this. Women are more emotionally sensitive than most men, and as so, that is a gift. There have been times when I have been too rough with my children, either verbally or physically, and I don't realize it at the moment. And my wife would say to me in private, but she would say to me, I think you were a little harsh. I think you were a little hard. I think you were a little rigid. And because I'm a stupid idiot, many times they just need to toughen up, suck it up, cupcake, all this kind of stuff. But in the end, when I was thinking clearly and more biblically, she was right. She was right. Yeah. That sensitivity, that emotional sensitivity that God, I believe, gave as a gift to women completes me. It keeps me from being a bore. It completes me from being a tyrant or just being unkind or insensitive.
Yeah.
And I think that's why communication between men and women is really important in the marital relationship.
Yeah.
So, and then there are other times when I may say to my, you know what, I think you are tolerating behavior that's not going to be healthy for them in the long run. I think you need to toughen up.
Yep.
This is a part of the common dialogue that should be going on between men and women.
It's like there's a tug and pull kind of happening from kind of our naturals, and this happens in our house too. I mean, I am probably more emotionally sensitive than you by like a little bit, but even in our house, there are times when I can be correcting one of the kids, and I might just not be understanding something that they said well enough. And it turns out that my response was too harsh, and it's only like afterwards that my wife can help me understand, like, oh wait, I misunderstood, and I got to come back and be like, I completely misunderstood, like that whole thing. Like there is a real value in husbands and wives being able to help each other.
And here's what I think is this: empathy, gentleness, intuition are not weaknesses; they're strengths.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
And I believe God gave women primary strengths in these domains that are good for us. They're good for us in ministry. They're good for us in how we lead our family. I think they're good for us in politics. I think they're good for us in business. And this is really important in a home because sometimes the reality of our homes is harsher than the reality we live out in public. I've seen people say things to their family members, their spouse, their children, or even their parents that they would never in a million years have said at work or at church or on a ball field or something. And when we get to that point, it's time for a dose of emotional empathy and sensitivity so that we're called to account. Because sometimes our behavior does not reflect our belief. And for whatever reason, I believe that often God allows my wife to be that voice in my life, my home. And I want that from my daughter. And I don't want her to feel less than because she's more emotional. I don't want her to feel less than because she's gentler, because she's more of a nurturer. And an overreaction to the 50s and an overreaction to hyperfeminism, to me, clouds that. And so we have to continue to look at the biblical pattern. And that's why I love Proverbs 31. And I know it's almost cliche because it is the hallmark passage of Scripture. But you've got this businesswoman who's directing her house. She has employees. She's buying real estate. She's doing this. She gets up. She's darning socks, for Pete's sake. She's knitting. She's cooking. She's planning menus.
What does darning socks mean?
Darning socks.
What is that?
Back in the old days, we didn't throw our socks away when they got a hole in them.
Oh, it's like patching them?
You don't patch them, you darn them.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
What is that?
I have to have you in my life, Josh, to remind me of how old I am.
Okay. Right? I thought darn was the word that you would say, you know, if you got frustrated because you weren't going to
I rarely would say even that word.
They do some kind of thing with socks.
Yeah, it involves taking yarn and patching the hole. Nobody does anymore because you buy socks for 99 cents a piece, right? You know, back in the day when you knitted your own socks. Anyway, we get off on the weirdest stuff.
Sorry.
All right.
I'll say I really love this picture of how husbands and wives can help each other. I was reminded recently, this kind of idea that, you know, you will likely for at least a lot of your life, if not the rest of your life, project your own father onto God, at least to some extent, for better or for worse. And just as you were talking, it occurred to me that like whatever that ends up being for my sons, again, for better and for worse, I think that will be closer to Jesus as a result of me being married to my wife and being corrected by her and balanced by her. That will be closer to Jesus than it would have been without her. Yeah. And that's a good thing for us all to strive for.
Yeah, and I think that something I've tried to explain over the years, and again, it sounds sexist, but I think it's a reality. If you and I were going at it,
like fighting, like arguing,
fighting, even if it got physical, it would be far different than if I were doing that with a woman.
Yeah,
on several different levels.
Yeah.
First of all,
elder abuse. No,
oh, that was cold. That was cold. Next week, come and listen to Life Talks for our new co-host.
That's right. Kidding. No, okay, so we're going at it. If we're going at it.
Yeah, and in the end, we could argue pretty hard, and in the end, still be friends. You know,
Yes.
like, you're an idiot, and you call me an idiot, and I say, okay, we're both idiots. So, okay. Generally speaking, those are not the kind of conflicts I have with my particularly my wife. But I have to be careful.
Different.
I have to be gentle because she is more sensitive, and I can be a brute if I'm physically. If you got up in my space, I'm going to respond. If you touch me, I'm going to probably touch you back.
Right.
And if I'm not being governed by the Holy Spirit at all, fist fight could break out pretty easily. I'm not going to do that with a woman. Right. And if I did, I'd be way, way, way out of line because I'm stronger and I'm bigger or whatever. So again, acknowledging the differences is important in how we engage. That's why I said to my daughters, never get physical with a man. Because if you get physical with a man, if you go up and you push him and slap him or punch him or whatever, there is that brief moment where he could,
it's instinctive reaction.
Instinctive reaction, respond physically. It's wrong then. It's wrong whether you think about it or you don't think about it. It's always wrong. A man should never, ever, and I never let my boys slap or respond to my daughter. But I didn't let my daughters do that to the boys because I didn't want the boys to be put in that position.
Right.
And, I think just a general rule of thumb ought to be, let's not hit each other.
Yeah. That's where I'm at.
Yeah. And so I think then a further aspiration would be, then let's not speak unkindly to each other. Let's not call each other names.
Right.
That doesn't seem like rocket science.
No.
But it is the reality.
Why does it seem like rocket science to everybody right now?
Yeah,
what is happening in our
and,
society?
Yeah, and you see, and that's part of my argument about the coarseness. So if everybody would just dial back a little bit and say, okay, let's find an area, first of all, on which we can agree. Mm-hmm. Because there ought to be, it doesn't matter how far apart you are, there are some things that we can agree on. How can we move forward on those? How can we advance those? If we did that politically, if we did that in the church, if we did that in our homes, there'd be a whole lot more peace. And then when we use language, actions, gestures, all of those things in a way that causes somebody else to feel threatened, it shuts it down. It builds a wall. And so that's kind of what I'm talking about in terms of the physical aspect. But one of the things that I think that we have to teach our daughters, beware of the lies that our culture is teaching you. And it includes about what it means to be a woman. It goes beyond that because the culture is lying to us on all kinds of things. But, TikTok is teaching our daughters, reteaching, reprogramming, indoctrinating, however you want to put it, what it means to be a woman. And there's a cultural thing going on, and I have not studied it enough, but there is a growing separation in Generation Z, and it's leaking into the Alpha generation. That's the one behind it, where there's a hostility that exists between the sexes. That women, I don't need a man type of attitude on the feminist part, or on the left part, or on the, I don't want to say the left part, on the militant stereotype that we see sometimes on college campuses. And then you've got the Andrew Tate, the hyper masculinity. Women are to be used and abused, and we're the alpha people, So, but I think those stereotypes are becoming mainstreamed, and I think pornography and the use of pornography is adding to that because women become objects and of less value, and women who view pornography often think that's reality, or that's what should be happening. If I want to keep a man or have a man or please a man, and that's, heaven forbid that ever be the case. So what we have to do is counter the culture's lies about what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a man, what it means to be in control, what it means to be a leader, what it means to be a servant, what it means to, all of these things we have to keep going back to the Bible on, because Satan is the great distorter. And so he distorts God's design into something that is similar but toxic. And so we have to be aware of that. And again, guiding our daughters and guiding our sons always involves us having an anchor that's attached to something that doesn't change, objective truth. And teaching that, then we make the adjustments that the culture demands of us. But we do so from a position of authority. We do so from a position of objective truth. We do so from a position of biblical foundation. And from there, we can make the applications. But when we skip the foundation and move directly to the applications, we've not anchored ourselves. And that's where I think this is why education is so important, why family discipleship is so important, why it's so important that we have these conversations with our kids growing up, and why we have some controls on the messages that they're getting. Just had lunch with a guy a while ago, and he was just talking about how they are absolutely adamant that their kids are not looking at screens. If they have to do it for education, they'll do it at that time, and then they put them away. And he says, what a battle. It's a constant battle. Everywhere we go, everybody else is shoving screens in front of their kids. My kid's like, why can't we do this?
Right.
And it's so essential that we are proactive. There has never been a generation of parents that needed to be more proactive than the current one.
Everyone read Jonathan Haidt's new book, The Anxious Generation. It is really, really good. It goes into a lot of the newest data, like the actual psychological data showing just how harmful smartphones and especially social media have been to teenagers, especially teenage girls.
Yeah. The research coming on that right now is absolutely blood-curdling.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So the last thing before we kind of close out this idea is that intentionally place role models in the lives of your daughter. That's something that Titus taught and other places in Scripture. But let the older women teach the younger women. Let there be this intentional development of role models. It's one of the things I think is sad, and we have a very transient society. My mother did not have access to her granddaughters on my side because we lived 1,400 miles away. But there are other women who have spoken into my daughter's lives that meant a lot, but not at the level I would have wanted and desired had we lived closer. Many of us, probably most of us, don't live in that proximity, and some of us have grandparents and parents that we maybe not want necessarily being a primary voice. But I think we can all find someone. And I think, by the way, speaking to the people who may be, empty nesters and older, we have an opportunity to come alongside the younger generation. You're not replacing their parents, and don't even try. That's not your role. But what you should be doing is encouraging them, giving them an outlet, providing a role model, giving them things to think about. And you say, oh, they'll think I'm an old person. Yeah, well, you are an old person. So, that's the reality. But it doesn't mean your voice is not important. And it helps anchor to tradition, helps anchor to heritage. But most of all, if you're a believer, it'll help anchor them to truth. And there is something powerful that the voice of an older person has in the voice of a younger person. And by the way, the research shows right now, particularly in Generation Z, they want that older voice. They desire that. They look forward to that. I've experienced it myself. I regularly have dinner or lunch or coffee with guys in their late teens, early 20s who just want to run something by an old guy. And they call me grandpa. They make fun of me. They tease me or whatever. At the same time, they seek it out. They text me and say, can we meet this week? Can we talk this week? I had an hour-long Zoom appointment with a young man yesterday. He's getting ready to go to college for the first time. And I don't know why he wants to talk to me, but he does. And I look at it as an opportunity. And his parents, by the way, have encouraged. I've talked to both his parents, and they say, we're so grateful. I don't say anything different than they did or would or whatever. I don't think so. And I would be very careful to avoid that.
Right.
At the same time, we all need these role models in our life. So anyway, we're gonna pause there and conclude this series. We'll hit up a new series on our next episode. But I just want to say to all the parents, God bless you. And I don't mean that in the Southern way. I really mean this. God bless your efforts, because what you're doing is important, and it is vital, and it never ends. By the way, as the parent of 4 adult children, I will tell you this: parenting never stops on this life, and you don't want it to. You don't want it to, because you love them and they love you. And you just keep those doors open. You keep that relationship strong, and you keep that love unending. And God will give you a voice in every generation if you'll just listen for it. So thanks as always for listening to us. Hope you'd share us, if you would, on your social media contacts. Let other people know. And if you ever have an idea that you would like to share with us, something that you would like to see us discuss or whatever, please do that by sending a quick email, if you would, to lifetalks@lifecharlotte.com. But until next time, thanks as always for joining us here here at Life Talks.